But since this room was Papa's, she allowed it. The general disorderliness was part of what I liked about the room. It gave it a lived-in feel, and it was my father who did the living in it. I felt secure there, knowing that as long as Papa was with us, there was nothing in the world to be afraid of. Papa took care of everything. He had even brought back people from the brink of the grave when other doctors had given up hope. When I asked Papa what he thought about Aunt Sally's sunray theory, he replied simply, "Well, we know that people go to heaven, and we know that angels come to earth, so they might as well travel by sunray as anything else, I suppose." He took off his wire-framed glasses and began to polish them thoughtfully before adding, "You might have some difficulty convincing the theologians of that one, however." I never thought very much about theologians, though I thought quite often about God. On that May afternoon while I was lying on the floor hoping for some sort of heavenly visitation, I recall I was rather angry with him. Mildly irritated was how I thought of it at the time, as it seemed a sin to be outright angry with God. But I was still reeling from the news shouted from the headlines 5 days earlier that the Lindburgh baby had been found dead in the woods near their home. Ever since his kidnapping on the 1st of March, I had prayed earnestly for his safe return, only to learn that all the while I was praying, he must have been dead already. I couldn't understand how such a thing could happen, how God could have watched the whole thing taking place without doing anything about it. That a child had been murdered was bad enough, but that it was the only son of Charles Lindburgh was unthinkable. Lindy was one of my heroes. His picture, cut out of a magazine, was one of 2 pictures stuck in the frame of my dresser mirror. I took what happened to him personally, and when little Charlie was found dead, I felt I had lost a member of my own family. I sighed deeply several times as I lay there on the floor, a sign of my disapproval for God's failing to intervene. But my last sigh was punctured by Mother's voice calling to me from the other room. "Jenny?" The emphasis on the second syllable signified Mother's disapproval of me, and I scrambled up from the floor of Papa's study and stumbled into the parlor where my mother stood, hands on hips, waiting for me. Her cotton dress was covered by the apron that she wore almost constantly, no matter what kind of housework she was doing. That afternoon she'd been washing the laundry down in the basement, directly beneath the parlor, and the piano. "Jenny, what are you doing in there? You know you're supposed to be practicing, and I haven't heard a single note out of the piano in the last 15 minutes. I looked up at the imposing figure of my mother. She was a tall, plain woman, with a shape that was decidedly middle-aged. Her midriff bore the remains of 4 pregnancies. Her arms and legs were thick and matronly, and the chin that cupped her round face was just beginning to sag. Her hair, still a rich chestnut color with only a hint of gray, was worn invariably parted in the middle and pulled straight back into a bun. Her narrow lips were pale, her cheeks colorless. She refused to highlight any of her features with cosmetics. She wasn't homely. Her features were well proportioned, and there was nothing unpleasant about her. She might even have been feminine and rather pretty, had her morals allowed it. But she did her utmost to appear austere and without gender, and to her credit, she succeeded quite well. As she hovered over me now, her face was a combined portrait of annoyance and hurt, as though I had insulted her personally by leaving my post. I could hardly tell her I'd been watching the sunbeams for angels, so I mumbled some excuse about giving my fingers a rest. "Giving your fingers a rest?" she echoed. "After 10 minutes of playing? Honestly, Jenny, how do you expect to master the piano if you refuse to practice?" I slid sheepishly back onto the piano bench, bent my fingers over the keys, and struck a harsh-sounding chord. "All right, Mama," I sighed. "I promise to practice another half-hour if you promise to call me Virginia." We had struck the bargain before. Neither of us was very good at holding up our end.